Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1560 of our daily content grind. This is something I've had on my mind for a long time, long before we got the news about Super Sentai being canceled, even longer, even before we found out about Power Rangers going on an indefinite hiatus. This has just been brewing in my brain for years now. Back when I was starting to realize Power Rangers is barely surviving, and Super Sentai doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot better because they've kind of devolved into formulaic nonsense. So, where in my brain can we come up with a solution to this? Because that's what my head does. It just goes, well, you're a geek for all of this. How would you want all of this done? So then my brain goes, let me work on that when you should be doing practical things instead. Good job, brain. We're gonna get so much done today. But this is where I have a YouTube channel for this, so we're gonna monetize my brain rot and all the random things that it comes up with. And let me just tell you how I would like to reboot Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, or the Power Rangers franchise in general. But let's be honest here, no matter what, it's going to be Mighty Morphin. I know there's a lot out there who are sick and tired of seeing the exact same costumes on every toy shelf and have seen it for the last 30 years. But let's be honest here, it's where the cash cow is. It's where the money is. I know you want to see a new set of in-space toys. I know you want to see a new set of, Wild Force toys, Time Force toys. Mighty Morphin is the moneymaker. No matter what, it is the safe bet. So we need to focus on that, because this needs to actually succeed. When I come up with reboots and rewrites and things like this, you know what I do. I try to keep it as practical as possible. I try to keep in mind the limitations that the companies would all have in store, what they could feasibly do with the franchise, as well as budgetary limitations. And in this case, I'm taking into account what would work on the toy shelves too, because the whole point of this would be to get toys to sell. So I need Mighty Morphin. It's safe, it's reliable, it's something that you can create a brand new fiction around and a brand new series with, and kids can get attached to it, but also still appeal to, the old school collectors who remember the original. So let's give credit here. Like, there is a lot that can be gained by doing this. The trick is we have to do it differently so that it offers something new to the longtime fans, as well as presenting something modern for kids. And when we talk about modernizing Power Rangers, I've said this before, and the first thing you're going to do, you're going to animate it. I'm sorry, this is just the main solution to everything. The Power Rangers struggles in last few years because they're forced to use things from Super Sentai that won't necessarily work over in America. But they don't really have a choice because they're beholden to whatever the live action footage is using. So you dump the live action footage. And you gain so many advantages when you do that. So many advantages when you do that. For starters, it's the popular media today. The live action thing for kids, it just feels old now. Animation is just timeless at this point. And we can just do like a modern CG show, or we can take it into, like a computer animation, that kind of thing. We'll see. But here's where the advantages begin. The Rangers don't all have to be the same. And this is a huge deal to me because I feel personally it's harder to stand out as a character when you're literally just a helmet and a color change different from anyone else on the team. So while it's easy to have favorites, like, you don't get behind like, why do you like the Black Ranger? Well, I identify with the character. I like his weapon. Okay, what about his design appeals to you more than the rest? He's black. That's basically all you have. So what if we had, like, if we were in animation, we can do whatever we want to them. The Rangers themselves can have different body types, which is something that I would go with. I would have, like a more athletic Red Ranger. And then the Blue Ranger, if it's Billy, can still be thinner, and then, like Zach can be like a little bit more, like a little bit taller, a little bit more buff. Good time to mention, I'd probably go with the casting choices that we did for the live action Power Ranger movie, the most recent one. That way you don't, cast an Asian as the Yellow Ranger. Let's not make that mistake again. But the point is, you can have these different body types. So, you can have a much more athletically fit Yellow Ranger who's more cut, more muscular, and then a very thin or smaller Pink Ranger because she's more of a gymnast. So all the Rangers can have a little bit of physical changes to them. And then you can go a little bit further. You could have design changes. Not everyone needs to have the same giant diamond on their chest. You could switch things up a little bit. You can have slightly different elements across them, so they can still look similar. But imagine it if, like, you gave the Mighty Morphin design to a whole, like, 5 different artists and told them, reimagine this. And then you took all 5 of their concepts and just put them all on the same team. They'd all feel familiar, but they would also look the same and have their own differences at the same time. That's what you could get away with here. You don't go as far as like Q Ranger. This is a little bit Q Ranger inspired, but and the whole thing with Q Ranger was they were too different, right? Because the whole thing with Power Rangers has been from the beginning. It's a way of making a toy line and a kid series really cheap. But when you make everybody a different design, that means everyone has to be a different toy mold. We're not going to go that far on this, just slight visual changes, So everyone can have their own thing going on. I'm kind of asking them to make unique molds for all the Rangers. I know I am, and I know that's going to be a knock against this concept. However, I don't think you can avoid it. I think you have to have... I think asking you to have a team of 5 characters who are basically all the same except for color and helmet shape, I think that's a little bit of a reach at this point in this, like modern toys. I think you need visual distinction between the Rangers a little bit. Let's go into Green Ranger because obviously that's going to be a huge thing. It's always going to be a huge thing. One thing about the Green Ranger that I have always been confused by, why didn't anyone ever explain why he has armor? Why didn't anyone ever explain why only the Green Ranger has armor? So let's play with that concept a little bit, shall we? Here's another thing that I would do to separate the Rangers design-wise. Ultimately, I think I would have them all with the same base design, very close to Mighty Morphin, but we're going to modernize it, But that said, it'd mostly be like, I want to play with like body shapes. I want everyone to have a little bit of different physique to them, almost like Ninja Turtles tried to do for a while. So for this though, the inspiration comes from this look, where you have the super armored Green Ranger from the 2010 toy line. So my thought here is, what if every Ranger had some semblance of this? What if, what if it wasn't just the Green Ranger? What if the Red Ranger had his own style of body armor? Maybe not as, doing the Green Ranger thing. Maybe it's just like round shoulder pauldrons that fall down his biceps, like the power coin chest at the center, strapped to connect them. Nothing over the top, just something to make him kind of distinct. And then you kind of spread that out amongst the other Rangers. So your Black Ranger would get gauntlets because he's supposed to be like the heavy of the team. So, so give him, he's got the more muscle power. So he gets the gauntlets. Your Yellow Ranger is supposed to be bigger on martial arts. So you give her not boots, but like leg covers, like shin guards or something, like gold armor there because her kicks are enhanced. You give a belt to Kimberly because she's going to make jokes about having a fashionable belt, but she's also but it's also a better balancing tool. So you're seeing where I'm giving unique abilities to everyone based on which piece of this armor they have. You give like the Triceratops horns becomes like a crown for Billy because it's intelligence. It raises his sense and awareness, makes him kind of a, almost a scout or an informant on the battlefield type thing, where he can relay what's going on to Jason to make the calls. So everyone has these like enhancements that come with their suits that make them separate as Rangers and gives them unique and different skills. So another thing that I want setting them apart. I want the Rangers to each feel like their own hero. So you have unique design elements, unique shapes, and unique abilities, even though they are still a united team. And then when the Green Ranger shows up, well, he's kind of got this perfect piece to him in his armor. Now, you go through the Green Ranger saga, you get him into the team, you have 6 Rangers now. You know what you can do with all that armor? All of them can come off the toys and join onto either the Red or the Green Ranger. That's an important thing. I think one of the things that makes the Green Ranger work is he's so similar to Jason. So I don't want to lose that dynamic. I want them to still be kind of like friendly rival characters, and they will have to share a body type for that. I'm also thinking about toyetic-wise, because all the Rangers, I want different body shapes, so I can't do anything too extreme with the armor, right? I think trying to get the belt to fit on both a male and female body is going to be the biggest stretch to this. I might have to build in some extension trick. Point being, what I'm basically doing here is creating a Mighty Morphin Battleizer. Something Mighty Morphin never got to have, because this concept came years after the debut. But this way, the toys all get to do something if you have all of them, which I think is fun. And it gives you like a cool power-up to show off in the show. Like I said, Battleizer. So fun things like that the original couldn't do because they're stuck with whatever the live action footage did. This lets you grow it, and this lets you do something fun and different. Which, speaking of fun and different, new Rangers. You aren't just stuck to 6. You can actually introduce new Rangers. Maybe not the Feathersaurus Ranger here, but pick a dinosaur or a dinosaur adjacent. We acknowledge that only 3 of the 7 dinosaurs are actually dinosaurs. I might change the dinosaur name too. I don't know what to, but it feels weird. Because a saber-toothed tiger is not a dinosaur. Point being, let's throw in some Rangers we've never done before. Let's have a Cyan Ranger. Let's have a Purple Ranger. Let's have an Orange Ranger. Let's add to the roster so we can introduce new toys. This is how I get away with like swapping with like having unique body types amongst the cast and unique armor pieces, because you can introduce repaints and retools of them as auxiliary Rangers. They might not have armor pieces, but they might have some cool weaponry instead, but you get to reuse the same toy bucks. You get to actually get some repaint possibility out of it. This is how I'm justifying all of this and getting away with it, okay? And then, yeah, you do Dinozords of dinosaurs that never got them in the original series, which, I think was a tragic lost opportunity. If Mighty Morphin had been done, like 15, 20 years later, they would have absolutely just made up more dinosaurs to add into that toy line just to fill it out and give kids more stuff to buy. I don't know why they didn't think of it back in 1994. Point being, my Ankylosaurus can finally have a proper Dinozord. Finally. So here's what you do. Rather than like swappable arms or things or anything like that, you do have them swap in on the Megazords, but you do it very specifically. So let's pick 3 dinosaurs here, or dinosaur adjacents, right? So you have your Ankylosaurus Zord, obviously. Let's go with the Stegosaurus, because that's a very popular dinosaur that was never in the original. And I'm adding a Dimetrodon. Yes, Red Claw. I know you're watching because it's a Power Ranger video. I know a Dimetrodon is not a dinosaur. It predates dinosaurs. But a woolly mammoth is also not a dinosaur. I'm going with this. And here's what I do with them. They become the Dragon Zords. That way, your Dragon Zord battle mode and your Megazord can coexist, like they never got to do in the original series. And while we're at it, auxiliary Zords have some unique abilities to them. I picked those 3 specifically because they have accoutrement that can be removed to create weaponry. Your Ankylosaurus obviously has a big hammer for a tail. Your Stegosaurus has a mace for a tail. Your Dimetrodon's big fin becomes an axe. And while the individual Zords can, like the individual Megazords can use that, especially if one is just like used to power up the original Megazord or swap out, because they have different capabilities. You know, like the Ankylosaurus Zord is going to be more heavily armored and be more defensive and heavy hitting than the Mastodon that's designed for swinging around the power sword. So you do that. You give the Dragon Zord his own set of Zords to combine with, and all those auxiliary weapons that they can separate into, they replace the drill on the Dragon Zord staff. So you can make giant weapons out of them with the toys, or give Dragon Zord Battle Mode more stuff to do. Interplay amongst the toys, more stuff for the show to show off. Again, I'm thinking both sides here. And it's just fair at this point. And hey, it'd be fun to redesign the Megazord to work the new Zords into it too. Oh, speaking of redesign, we can redesign the Zords while we're at it. Again, we've seen really, really cool new takes on some of the Dino Zords over the years. Flame Toys is the one that people jump to immediately. We can do things like that. We can modernize and upgrade, make it look like a modern mecha, something that kids would be a little bit more, attracted to today, rather than just sticking to the same design from the early 90s that we always have. Again, the beauty of animation, you can do whatever you want with it. And if we want to come up with a brand new look for the Megazord, that's what we can do. And I really like the idea of just adding like giant, pterodactyl wings to the Dino, to the Dino Megazord. I like that. Can we get more of that? Yes, we can, if we do this. Let's get to story stuff. We're going to do a little bit of story stuff. I'm not going to go into like individual rangers and like teen drama to face and all this, but we are going to touch on a few tropes that Power Rangers does that really needs to be removed. For instance, what's the point of combining the weapons or all the weapons having finishing moves if the monster isn't going to get destroyed by them? This is where I fell off of Super Sentai, because I watched for years and it just became the same formula. Basic plot goes on. They try to fight the monster once and don't succeed. They start resolving the plot of the episode. They get into a fight with the monster again. They end up on the winning side this time. They combine their weapons or power up their weapons, get one big blast. Monster blows up. They go, no, actually, we're going to revive the monster and make them grow. And then the Rangers go, oh, well, we got robots for that. Here, come on in, robots. And the robots all come in. They immediately combine, very short fight, blow up the monster again. And this time the monster's dead. They can't make it grow again. We're not insane or anything. Who would think of that? Why would we, if we can revive a monster with a magic wand, why would we keep reviving it until the Megazord went down? That would be silly. You'll love the logic loopholes, right? But that was a formula for so long. And I just kept thinking to myself, what's the point of the individual weapons when they never actually finish the enemy? Why go through the whole power up and like big blast thing if the weapons are just going to feel ineffective and the victory is going to be taken away the next minute? And I feel the same about the Zords. What's the point of individual Zords when they don't get a chance to look cool and do stuff on their own? It's one thing that what's the one thing they got right with Go Buster? The individual Zords actually did stuff from time to time. And, they proved individually useful, so they were kind of cool on their own. That's the thing. Most Zords aren't cool. The Megazords are cool, but most Zords are boring. Most Zords are just kind of there to be a robot chunk. And it just takes the wind out of my sails, Like, I want them to be more special. I want them to do more unique and fun things. Well, formula that needs to change. Things that can make it more interesting. As long as we're changing formulas, let's go to villains, shall we? And I love this. We're starting with Rita and Zed. I'm not wasting time with this whole Day of the Dumpster stuff. No, Rita and Zed have their eyes set on Earth and they are conquering it one way or another. Here's the difference. I am making them a working pair here. Like, they are the emperor and empress of the universe. They are conquerors together, and they have different abilities, they have different technique, but they are a united pair. They're already husband and wife, but not dumbed down like they were in season 2 or 3. This one, this pair is a menace. And here's what makes them menacing is that they actually act like an emperor and empress, where they sit in command of their empire, of their minions, their army, their soldiers. They don't directly involve themselves unless they absolutely have to. So you never lose menace because the villain of the week, the plot of the week, never really falls onto them for failure. It always goes down to one of their underlings. And Rita might get more temperamental about it than Zed does. Zed's going to be the calm one. Zed is coldly calm to the point where he is frighteningly calm. I want him to have aura and menace, where I want Rita to actually have that explosive, like, temper that, generates fear from her minions. You don't want to cross either of them for different reasons. And let's talk of minions here. So Finster obviously gets to be the monster maker. But here's the thing with Finster. Here's the fun part with Finster. He himself creates these organic monsters from his living clay, which we can upgrade over the season as we did with the putties and super putties. But that's really his niche. That's his skill. He does craft these creatures that they can send down to Earth for their plots. But he himself is also coming up with these plans. He's not just making things Rita ordered him to make. He's the one coming up with why he is creating these monsters, because this is what he has in mind for it. This is how it can destroy Earth, or this is how it can destroy the Rangers. And this is basically something he has to pitch to Rita and Zed. And if the plan fails, which of course it will because it's Power Rangers, he's the one who catches the blame, not Rita and Zed. It's not their fault the plan didn't work. They just signed off on it. Just to, it's up to Finster to pull it off. Well, like I said, he handles things with magic and the organic. The mechanical is handled by Squat. I'm not using Squat and Babu as just mindless humor amongst the villain cast. I am actually giving them something to do, and I'm giving them purpose. They might be a little bit goofball compared to some of the others, but they actually have something to them. Squad is more mechanical in this. He is more armored. He is leaning into more a blacksmith aesthetic because he makes monsters himself, because he deals in the inorganic, the machine, the cyborg. Lots of his stuff is robots and mechanical stuff, things that he hammers together. So his plots generally revolve around things like that, sabotage, more brute force stuff that his big robots are capable of. So you have organic and inorganic. The split here is the alien, and that is Babu's job. Here, Babu is something of a almost like a black market dealer, or like an informant. He's the one with all these connections to the rest of the universe. He is the underworld connection for Rita and Zed. So when he finds someone to hire to try to help them take over Earth, it's usually the far more alien of the monsters. They're creepier. They're more disgusting. This is my way of introducing a lot more variety to what is going on in the show, rather than just sending, monsters, because Rita's were all based on fairy tales and folklore. Zed's are all based on turning real world objects into monsters, so they get a little bit repetitive. This is a way of mixing things up. This almost taking on a Bokenger route of having different sources of your villains and monsters every week. And as long as you're doing that, you can also play around with mixing and matching. So if we want a cyborg, then Finster and Squat have to come up with a plan themselves. They have to unite and collab to come up with what they're going to do. If they have an alien they want to augment with magic, well, Finster has to do that for Babu. You know, things like that would give it a lot more flavor. And this means that when Lord Zed or Empress Rita, when they give a plan themselves, that's when you make it serious. Because if they're stepping up to handle things themselves, then it's going to be major. You know, Rita's going to step up for the Green Ranger saga, obviously. Zed might step up for, someone else, would be a 2 or 3 parter in order for the Rangers to get out of. The big, really menacing threats are the only times Rita and Zed handle things themselves. And you need that, because you need to show how much more powerful they are, how much more of a threat they are. So, you have, basically them standing off until they have something of their own that they want put into play. And speaking of, we still need Goldar and we still need Scorpina. They are Royal Guard to the two. Goldar for Zed, Scorpina for Rita. If they like Squat, Babu, or Finster's plan well enough, they might lend them the personal guard in order to make sure it goes off well. That way you also keep some menace to Goldar and Scorpina. They're not constantly losing every week. Their role is basically whatever task needs to be done in order to make sure Squat, Babu, whoever's plan goes off without a hitch. Beyond that, they're not to risk themselves in battle because they're the Royal Guard. They're powerful, but they need to stay in the palace just in case the Rangers just decide to get a little bit jumpy and start directly attacking. So once their role is done, if the plan starts going awry, they just book it out because that's not their job anymore. So they're a menace, they're a threat, and they are very difficult enemies for the Rangers, but their task is not to stay there during the fight. Their task is to protect Zed and Rita, just in case. So when they get serious and they get down to a fight, again, it's very menacing. It feels like a big deal. Now let's talk about elephant in the room, because I know a lot of people who want a full-on reboot of Power Rangers going, just adapt the Boom comics. Lord Draken is the most awesome thing ever. Just make him the villain. Make him the thing everything is focused around. Cool it. Cool it. Cool it. Establishment first. First we build the world. Then we do twisted stuff like this. This is where I actually take advantage of Zordon. Zordon and Alpha don't really need to do anything different. I think they're fine in the roles they are, regardless of the reboot they're going to do. You might build up Zordon's backstory a little bit more, just so we have a little bit more gravitas to him. But one of the things about him is they never use the fact that he's trapped in a time warp, which means he has access to a few things that the other Rangers might not necessarily be aware of, like, acknowledgement of alternate timelines and such. So if we take that into account, what if Zordon throughout season 1 knows of Lord Draken, which is one reason why he gets like super serious during the Green Ranger arc or something. He knows of Lord Draken in another timeline. He wants to move to prevent it. The Rangers may even take mercy on Tommy and try to break the spell rather than try to defeat him outright. Specifically because if they try to just straight up beat the Green Ranger in a fight, it's not going to go well, and that leads to the Lord Draken timeline. So Lord Draken gets a setup as like maybe a season 2 villain to join the main villain cast. Maybe in service to Rita and Zed in a way of like both sides of that ordeal want to backstab the other because they're villains. They're going to do the villain thing. But you save it. You save it for season 2. Ideally, in my head, you play it off to where at the end of season 2, Zed manages to take the power from Lord Draken and have his own dragon, tiger, whatever ranger form, this huge amalgamation of power to be the big bad threat for the Rangers at the end of season 2. And then you kill off Zed so that season 3 can introduce Rita's family. So your Rito Revolto, your Master Vile, as bigger threats than Zed was. And no, they aren't going to be comical or goofy. They are also going to be played a lot more menacingly. The villains need to feel like villains, you know. And by the way, we're telling constant ongoing stories with this, not episodic. I want this to fall into the realm of like Avatar, or let's say like even like your Adventure Time and Steven Universe, where like there's an overarching storyline. I don't just want to just be like chunk episodes that you could just completely ignore and nothing happens, you know, and the status quo doesn't change or anything. I want long stories. I want ongoing serialized that kids can get invested in, because those seem to be the shows that hold up the test of time. Before we get into it, okay, I completely forgot. I've covered everything. I covered everything except Bulk and Skull. How are we gonna, like, what are we gonna do with Bulk and Skull during the reboot? Nothing. We're going to do nothing. Not only because bullies are a universal experience for kids, but also because they really don't do anything wrong as characters. They don't need to change. They are the best thing in Power Rangers that no one ever talks about, because of their growth over like the course of 6 seasons. Because they're the only characters in the entire show who get 6 seasons worth of growth. Here's what you do. Remember, during the original Mighty Morphin, at season 2, they switch from just being plain up bullies, and their source of comedy goes from comical ways of trying to figure out who the Power Rangers are. Well, what if you flip that? What if their first attempt is successful? And now they're in on it, but they, you know, these are people they know, and because they are the Power Rangers, they have a huge amount of respect for them. So now they got to rethink what they've been doing to them. So there's your character growth of like, maybe this bullying thing wasn't the right idea. However, now you have this fun new dichotomy where Bulk and Skull can now help cover for the other Rangers, and the bullying is how you do it. So if Billy gets a call from Zordon, there's an emergency at the command center, he needs to get there, but it's a crowded school hallway. He like nudges over to Bulk. You know what Bulk does? Bulk shoves him into the nearest locker and closes him in there. Typical bully stuff. But Billy is now out of sight and he can teleport away. And Bulk is fully aware of that's what's going on. And then you draw the comedy from, well, how does he explain this to a teacher who eventually shows up? How does he explain it when, like, they open up the locker and Billy's not there? You know, you have ways of playing it for laughs after that. So you find new ways of, like, working the bullying in when it's a feint. And, like, just making them, like, comical allies of the Rangers. You know, I'm not saying they're going to get morphers themselves at some point, but I like the growth of the characters. We're just fast forwarding a little bit. So there you go. In a video that's way longer than I intended it to be, that is basically what goes through my head about like how I would handle a Power Ranger reboot. This is something that's been churning in my brain for a long time. I wanted to sketch out a lot of this, but frankly, the longer I wait to have time to sketch out like how I would redesign the Megazord, how the new Zords, the new Rangers, like the remodels of the Rangers, the longer I kind of thought about all that, the realization of like, you're never gonna have time to draw all this out comes in. You just need to make the video already because it's very timely at the moment. So those are the thoughts. Those are the ideas. You're free to let me know in the comments below what you think. If there's anything different you do, if you like any of this or not, feel free to let me know. And that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.